Welcome back to U.S. and World Politics Decoded. In a world often defined by political alliances and diplomatic handshakes, some relationships remain stubbornly complex, marked by stark disagreements and public criticism. Today, we delve into one of the most fascinating and perhaps unexpected of these fraught dynamics: the difficult relationship between Pope Francis, the head of the Catholic Church, and Donald Trump, the President of the United States. Two global figures, each of them immensely influential, yet worlds apart on fundamental issues. What happens when the spiritual leader of billions clashes with the leader of the free world? Stick around as we decode the history, the controversies, and the underlying tensions that defined their interactions. Pope Francis and Donald Trump. It's hard to imagine two leaders with more contrasting styles and worldviews. One, a Jesuit priest from Argentina known for his emphasis on humility, social justice, and outreach to the marginalized. The other, a real estate mogul turned politician known for his populist rhetoric, America First policies, and a more transactional approach to global affairs. While both commanded significant global attention, their paths rarely aligned, often leading to public and private friction. They fundamentally disagreed on critical issues like immigration, environmental policy, and geopolitics. These weren't just minor differences of opinion, they represented deep ideological divides that played out on the world stage. Even early on, the signs of a potential clash were there. Remember back in 2013, shortly after Francis became Pope? News outlets reported on his simple act of returning to his hotel to pay his own bill. A gesture seen by many as indicative of the modesty that would define his papacy. Yet, for Donald Trump, even this was cause for commentary. He tweeted, "I don't like seeing the Pope standing at the checkout counter of a hotel to pay his bill. It's not Pope-like." When challenged by a commentator about humility, Trump quipped, "That's why I'll never be Pope." Interestingly, just 9 months later, Trump seemed to have a change of heart, tweeting, "The new Pope is a humble man, very much like me, which probably explains why I like him so much." A fleeting moment of perceived similarity, perhaps, but one that wouldn't last. The real flashpoint, the moment their disagreements burst into the global spotlight, came during the 2016 U.S. presidential election campaign. Trump's signature promise was the construction of a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. For Pope Francis, whose papacy has been deeply marked by his concern for migrants and refugees, his very first papal trip was to the Italian island of Lampedusa, a major entry point for asylum seekers. This was deeply problematic. Returning from a trip to Mexico, where he held a mass near the border, Pope Francis made a statement that resonated globally. "A person who thinks only about building walls, wherever they may be, and not building bridges, is not Christian." This was a direct, albeit unnamed, challenge to Trump's core campaign promise and, in the Pope's view, his identity as a Christian. Trump's response was swift and sharp. He called the Pope's comments disgraceful. In a campaign statement, he retorted that if the Vatican were ever attacked by ISIS, the Pope would have only wished and prayed that Donald Trump would have been president. This exchange was unprecedented. As Democratic Representative Brendan Boyle, a practicing Catholic, noted, it created a situation where a pope openly criticized a U.S. presidential candidate and later president, and that candidate was eager to fire back. Boyle attributed this directness from the Pope to Trump's vehement opposition to immigration and his insulting rhetoric about immigrants. Despite this public sparring, protocol dictated a meeting. In May 2017, President Trump visited the Vatican. Photos from the meeting often showed a stark contrast in expressions, though Trump later described the meeting as fantastic. But the underlying policy differences remained. Pope Francis gifted Trump a copy of his encyclical on environmental protection, Laudato Si', widely seen as an attempt to encourage the president to address climate change. It seems this gesture had little effect, as Trump withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Agreement on climate change just weeks later. Francis also gave Trump a medallion depicting an olive tree, a symbol of peace. Trump reportedly responded, "We can use peace." The tensions didn't cease after the election or the Vatican visit. In 2018, Pope Francis condemned the Trump administration's policy of separating migrant children from their parents at the border, calling it immoral and contrary to our Catholic values. A year later, criticizing Trump's broader immigration stance, the Pope warned that those who build walls will become prisoners of the walls they build. This strained relationship sharply contrasted with the Pope's interactions with Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama. The Obama-Francis relationship was seen by many liberals as symbolizing a more progressive era, with alignment on issues like easing tensions with Cuba and the Iran nuclear deal. Former Secretary of State John Kerry mentioned Pope Francis's enormous admiration for President Obama's trajectory and peacekeeping efforts. This perceived closeness, however, may have inadvertently set the stage for conflict with Trump, who actively courted conservative Catholics who felt alienated by this alignment. Stephen P. Millies, an expert on the Catholic Church and politics, has suggested that, for Donald Trump, Pope Francis seemed like an enemy because he had maintained a friendly relationship with Obama and Biden. He added, a personal relationship between Pope Francis and Donald Trump was not very likely. What we might call personal tensions have become very publicly visible. This contrasts with Pope Francis's call to Joe Biden after he became the second Catholic U.S. president, where the Pope expressed appreciation for Biden's focus on the poor and those in need. Even during Trump's second term, the friction continued. Amidst a renewed focus on immigration enforcement, Pope Francis penned a public letter to U.S. Catholic bishops in February 2025, describing a program of mass deportations as a major crisis. He argued that while nations have a right to defend themselves, policies that equate the illegal status of some migrants with criminality are flawed. He wrote about the dignity of those forced to leave their homes due to poverty, insecurity, or environmental degradation, emphasizing their vulnerability. This letter also appeared to subtly rebuke comments made by Vice President J.D. Vance, a Catholic convert, who had suggested people should prioritize their own family, community, and country before others. Pope Francis countered, writing, "Christian love is not a concentric expansion of interests that gradually extends to other people and groups." Despite this public disagreement, Vance did meet briefly with Pope Francis shortly before the pontiff's passing. So, what can we take away from this complex relationship? It was a dynamic defined by fundamental disagreements on core values and policies, particularly concerning the vulnerable, the environment, and the nature of borders. Pope Francis, guided by principles of social justice and global solidarity, often found himself directly challenging the nationalist and protectionist policies championed by Donald Trump. Trump, in turn, rarely shied away from responding, viewing the Pope's criticisms through a political lens and perhaps seeing him as aligned with his opponents. It highlights a broader tension in the modern world, the intersection of faith, politics, and global leadership. When figures of immense influence hold such divergent views on how the world should work and who deserves protection, clashes are perhaps inevitable. Their interactions serve as a stark reminder that even at the highest levels, deep ideological divides can create significant friction, shaping not only headlines but potentially the course of international relations and discourse on critical global issues. That's all the time we have for today on U.S. and World Politics Decoded. The relationship between Pope Francis and Donald Trump offers a compelling case study in the complexities of modern leadership and the enduring power of differing worldviews. What are your thoughts on their interactions? Did the Pope have a right to criticize a political leader? Was Trump justified in his responses? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this analysis insightful, please give this video a like and share it with anyone interested in global politics and religion. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to U.S. and World Politics Decoded and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update as we continue to unravel the intricate world of U.S. and global affairs. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.